Hi, so this time I'm going to share with you the Jane Austen's novel entitled Emma. Jane Austen's Emma, published in 1815, is a witty and insightful novel that revolves around the life of Emma Woodhouse, a young, wealthy, and intelligent woman living in the fictional village of Highbury, England. The characters of this novel are first Emma, the protagonist of the novel. In the well known first sentence of the novel, the narrator describes Emma as handsome, clever, and rich, with a comfortable home and happy disposition. In some ways, the 20-year-old Emma is mature of her age because her mother is dead and her older sister married. She is already the head of her father's household. So next is Mr. George Knightley, Emma's brother-in-law and the Woodhouse trusted friend and advisor. Knightley is respected landowner in his late 30s. He lives at Donwell Abbey and leases his property to the Martins, a family of wealthy farmers whom he likes and counsels. Next is Mr. Woodhouse, Emma's father and the patriarch of Hartfield, the Woodhouse estate. Though Mr. Woodhouse is nervous, frail, and prone to hypochondria, he is also known for his friendliness and his attachment to his daughter. Next is Harriet Smith, a pretty but unremarkable 17-year-old woman of uncertain parentage who lives at a local boarding school. Harriet becomes Emma's protege and the object of her matchmaking schemes. Next is Frank Churchill, Mr. Weston's son and Mr. Winston's stepson. Frank Churchill lives at Escombe with his aunt and uncle, Mr. and Mrs. Churchill. Next is Jane Fairfax, Miss Bates' niece, whose arrival in Highbury irritates Emma. Jane Emma's rival Emma in accomplishment and beauty, she possesses a kind heart and a reserved temperament. Mr. Weston, formerly Miss Taylor, Emma's beloved governess and companion. Next is Mr. Weston, the widower and the proprietor of Randalls, who has just married Miss Taylor when the novel begins. Next is Mr. Elton, the village vicar, a handsome and agreeable man considered a welcome addition to any social gathering. Then Mr. Robert Martin, a 24-year-old farmer. And then Miss Bates, friend of Mr. Woodhouse and aunt of Jane Fairfax. And Isabella Knightley, Emma's older sister, who lives in London with her husband, Mr. John Knightley, and their 5 children. Mr. John Knightley, Emma's brother-in-law, and Mr. George Knightley's brother. Next is Mr. Elton, formerly Augusta Hawkins. Mrs. Elton hails from Bristol and meets Mr. Elton in Bath. Mrs. Churchill, Mr. Weston's ailing former sister-in-law and Frank Churchill's aunt and guardian. And then Colonel Campbell, a friend of Jane Fairfax's father, who lives in London and who takes charge of orphan Jane when she is 8 years old. So the novel begins in describing Emma, although convinced that she herself would never marry. Emma Woodhouse, a precocious 20-year-old resident of the village of Highbury, imagined herself to be naturally gifted in conjuring love matches. After self-declared success at matchmaking between her governess and Mr. Weston, a village widower, Emma takes it upon herself to find an eligible match for her new friend Harriet Smith. Though Harriet's parentage is unknown, Emma is convinced that Harriet deserves to be a gentleman's wife and sets her friend's sight on Mr. Elton. Mr. Elton is the village vicar. So meanwhile, Emma persuades Harriet to reject the proposal of Robert Martin, a well-to-do farmer for whom Harriet clearly has feelings. Harriet becomes infatuated with Mr. Elton under Emma's encouragement, but Emma's plans go awry when Elton makes it clear that his affection is for Emma, not Harriet. So Emma realizes that her obsession with making a match for Harriet has blinded her to the true nature of the situation. Mr. Knightley, Emma's brother-in-law, a treasured friend, watches Emma's matchmaking efforts with a critical eye. He believes that Mr. Martin is a worthy young man whom Harriet would be lucky to marry. He and Emma quarrel over Emma's meddling, and, as usual, Mr. Knightley proves to be the wiser of the pair. Elton, spurned by Emma and offended by her insinuation that Harriet his, is his equal, leaves for the town of Bath and marries a girl there almost immediately. Emma is left to comfort Harriet to wonder about the character of a new visitor expected in Highbury, Mr. Weston's son, Frank Churchill. Frank is said to visit his father in Highbury after having been raised by his aunt and uncle in London, who have taken him as their heir. Emma knows nothing about Frank, who has long been deterred from visiting his father by his aunt's illness and complaints. Mr. Knightley is immediately suspicious of the young man, especially after Frank rushes back to London merely to have his hair cut. Emma, however, finds Frank delightful and notices that his charms are directed mainly toward her. Though she plans to discourage these charms, she finds herself flattered and engaged in a flirtation with the young man. So Emma greets Jane Fairfax, another addition to the Highbury set, with less enthusiasm. Jane is beautiful and accomplished, but Emma dislikes her. It is because of her reserve, and the narrator insinuates because she is jealous of Jane. Suspicion, intrigue, and misunderstanding ensue. Mr. Knightley defends Jane, saying that she deserves compassion because, unlike Emma, she has no independent fortune and must soon leave home to work as a governess. Mrs. Weston suspects that the warmth of Mr. Knightley's defense comes from romantic feelings, an implication Emma resists. Everyone assumes that Frank and Emma are forming an attachment, though Emma soon dismisses Frank as a potential suitor and imagines him as a match for Harriet. At a village ball, Knightley earns Emma's approval by offering to dance with Harriet, who has just been humiliated by Mr. Elton and his new wife. The next day, Frank saves Harriet from James Biggars when Harriet tells Emma that she has fallen in love with a man above her social station. Emma believes that she means Frank. Knightley begins to suspect that Frank and Jane have a secret misunderstanding, and he attempts to warn Emma. Emma laughs at Knightley's suggestion and loses Knightley's approval when she flirts with Frank and insults Miss Bates, a kind-hearted spinster and Jane's aunt, at a picnic. When Knightley reprimands Emma, she weeps. News comes that Frank's aunt has died, and this event paves the way for an unexpected revelation that slowly solves the mysteries. Frank and Jane have been secretly engaged. His attentions to Emma have been a screen to hide his true preference. With his aunt's death and his uncle's approval, Frank can now marry Jane, the woman he loves. Emma worries that Harriet will be crushed, but she soon discovers that it is Knightley, not Frank, who is the object of Harriet's affection. Harriet believes that Knightley share her feelings. Emma finds herself upset by Harriet's revelation, and her distress forces her to realize that she is in love with Knightley. Emma expects Knightley to tell her he loves Harriet, but to her delight, Knightley declares his love for Emma. Harriet is soon comforted by a second proposal from Robert Martin, which she accepts. The novel ends with the marriage of Harriet and Mr. Martin, and that of Emma and Mr. Knightley, resolving the question of who loves whom after all. The novel's central theme is Emma's Woodhouse journey of self-discovery. Initially, she is arrogant, self-assured, and prone to meddling in the lives of others. Throughout the story, she encounters situations that challenge her assumptions, forcing her to confront her flaws and learn valuable lessons about empathy, humility, and the importance of considering others' feelings. By the end, Emma has matured significantly, becoming more self-aware and understanding. So in this novel, what touches me the most is Emma's transformation. By reading Emma's journey from arrogant knave to self-awareness and genuine humility is deeply satisfying. It's relatable to see someone overcome their flaws and grow into a better person. The scene where she finally recognizes her own mistakes and accepts Mr. Knightley's love is particularly moving, and we truly know in this novel that we cannot control love. So some quotable statements that I found in this novel is I am not romantic, I never was. I ask only a comfortable home. It was seen in chapter 8. This statement by Emma reveals her initial lack of understanding about love and happiness. So the lesson I've learned in this novel is the importance of looking beyond social class. We read about Emma critiques the rigid social hierarchy of 19th century England, and then Emma often judges others based on their social standing, overlooking their true worth. So the novel encourages us readers to look beyond social class and recognize the value of individuals based on their character and qualities. So that's all.